I was taking a walk, and I was walking through an incredible forest. It's not the summer now, it's October, but this was during the summer, and the river had dried up. It was just a dry riverbed, and there was trees all around me, and I got this thought and this inspiration about failure. And this didn't come from nowhere. I was also reading a book called Black Box Thinking at the time. Now, Black Box Thinking is very interesting. They go through a number of different things. They go through how the airline industry deal with airplane crashes where people die, and they also go through how medical doctors or the medical system deals with doctor failure, I guess you could say, or when something goes wrong in an operation and someone dies or has some extremely negative result from an operation, paralyzation, something like that. And clearly when a plane goes down, it's a failure. People die. Even in the case where there was an incredible pilot in the States, I think he was a ex-army pilot, and there was an issue with the plane, and he brought the plane down in a river, which I'm trying to think of the name of the river now, but I think it was in River New York. It'll come back to me. But he brought the plane down the river. No one was killed, and he walked up and down the plane. He checked that everybody was off before he got off himself, and even though nobody was killed, it's still in this obviously huge success. No one died, but it's still a huge overall failure for the airline industry. But in Black Box Thinking, they're explaining how the airline industry deal with failure, and that's what the black box is about. They want to find out what happened. So they have two black boxes which tell them what's going on in the cockpit, and also it checks all the instruments in the plane, so they can work out why a crash happened and what the issue was. Now, and they really contrasting it to the medical industry, where if there's an issue in an operation, they will usually say something like, well, it was unforeseen, or it couldn't be helped. But they don't go through what happened with the issue in the operation. They don't study it so that it can be stopped again, and I guess that will lead to some people dying who didn't need to die, because it would have happened before, and if it had been studied and new procedures put into place, it would have meant that their operation would have been okay, because there were the correct procedures in place. And some of these things are really simple things, like washing your hands properly, or just things like two containers being beside each other, and one has medicine in it, or one is a painkiller and the other one is some other chemical, and they just give the two containers look the same, so they give the patient the wrong chemical or something. So some of them are very simple things that could be avoided. Now, but it gave me, when I was walking in this woods this time, it gave me the inspiration that there is no failure. And I've been through failure. I've had huge success, and then huge success followed by huge failure, which I was about to say huge success is always followed by huge failure. I guess it's not. I guess people just have success, and that's great. But being successful or getting a certain amount of success does leave you vulnerable to huge failure, because the higher you build something up, like I built a business up, the higher you build it up, the more it could fall. Now, and you even find this with people, like, for example, people who win the lottery, that some of them go through all the money and actually get in a lot more debt. And there's stories of people who've won the lottery that it was the worst thing that could possibly have ever happened to them, because they ended up having a lot more debt afterwards, and plus they got used to a different type of lifestyle, so it was very hard to go back to their old lifestyle again. And you have that same issue with maybe people who became very, very famous, and it's very hard to go back to working in Tesco. Nothing wrong working in Tesco, but if you've been famous, you've had groupies, you've had lots of attention, and everyone knows you are this famous person, and you lose the money or spend the money, or the money's gone, and it's very hard to go back to having a normal life, because everyone's going to know that you did have this fame in the past. But when I'm looking at it and I'm getting this inspiration, I'm thinking, well, in fact, there is no such thing as failure. When a child is trying to walk and they get up and they hold on to a couch or something for a few minutes, and they let go of the couch and they're like, wow, I'm actually standing. I'm not holding anything and I'm standing, and then they take a few steps and they fall. They hurt themselves. Nobody says, oh, you're such a terrible failure, you'll never learn how to walk. What a disaster. Just give up now. It's a waste of your time. You failed. Same thing with a child learning to ride a bike. I was teaching my own son how to ride a bike recently, and so he cycles a bike and I hold on to the bike. Stabilizers are off, I hold on to the bike, and he's saying push, 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 and he's pushing the pedals with all his might, and I'm holding it, and I let go, and I'm running beside him for a few moments, and he's going. The bike is going for a few moments, and then there's a slight wobble, there's a bigger wobble, and I grab the bike. I'm still there. I grab the bike, and maybe I happened to have been running beside him and I grabbed the bike again. But maybe, a lot of kids, you don't grab the bike and they go over and they hurt themselves. Maybe they cut their face. And is that a failure? Is that part of the process of learning? So we have to take a look at what we call failure and ask ourselves, is that actual failure, or is it part of the process of learning? And part of that is how big your failures are. Like, for example, when you're playing poker, you cannot win every hand. It's impossible. In fact, a good strategy is to lose a number of hands sometimes to help you win the overall game. So failure is built into the game. You have to fail. You cannot play the game if you're not willing to fail. If you want to put that word on a failure, the word I think that is much more helpful is trial and error. So, and even trial and error isn't a perfect word either, because sometimes, when you're playing poker, it's not even trial and error. You may be failing purposely. You may want to put someone in a false sense of security that they can beat you. And then on the really, really big hand, you win, and then they get mad at that and they go in all in another big hand, and you keep winning. And so it's part of the process of making sure your failures are many but small, and your wins are many or some wins, but they're big wins. So your wins are just bigger than your failures, or wins and losses, I guess you could call them. So, and that's part of what happened to me, for example, that I succeeded. Everything I did at that time was turned to gold. Now the economy was in a big boom, so that helped, but that is not everything. Plenty of people in the boom have never make any money. And so I've succeeded. I just couldn't stop succeeding. Everything was just going great for years. But then when I did fail, when the economy dropped and I wasn't prepared, I got destroyed, and people were hurt, which I would have considered friends. And business fails, a lot of people get hurt. You're walking on a road and you see a restaurant and there's a sign up, restaurant closed or something, and it just looks like a sign, but behind that sign there's a family and kids there's a small child who wanted something at Christmas, they're not going to get it. There's employees that find difficulty getting another job, struggling. And there's a whole network of people. There's suppliers, that have not got paid. There's a whole network of people that's affected. It just looks like a sign, but it's more than a sign. But the way around this is to fail often and fail in a managed way. So, when you're playing poker, you may purposely fail, or or a certain amount of hands, you just know you're going to not win anyway. That's just the way it is. But you're clever about it, and you make sure there's small hands. You're not going to win the game, you just throw in. You're not going to win this game, throw in. So you're not wasting all of your built up capital on the failures. You're keeping your capital for the wins. And maybe one time you think you're going to win, you don't win, and that just happens sometimes. You accept that and you move on. And this is difficult because the words aren't there for this yet. But because the words we just use are trial, error, failure, lose, whatever it is. But there is going to be a certain amount of games you just don't win. And the important thing is to make sure, have the trial and error, and also have a process in place for the times that you do lose, that you learn from if you lose, you learn from it. So you find out what went wrong, put new procedures. Let's say I'm just talking about business now, for example. Put new procedures in place in order to mitigate that loss doesn't happen again. Because sometimes you're going to lose, but you need to learn from it. It's really, really important that you learn from it. So I think the overall thought in this is that we've got to learn from, we've got to use trial and error. Use trial and error in order to improve systems and make sure that when we do win, we win big. And if it's failing, let it fail, and let it fail small.